Hello. Our group project was on the Reed vs. Town of Gilbert case. The participants of this group are Emma Handren, Hallie Hutchins, James Kloss, and Samantha Lancor. This case has to deal with signs and whether there is a lawful or unlawful way to present these signs in a manner for especially temporary directional signs. During this case, we'll give you the background of Arizona state law, which is where the town of Gilbert is located. And we will also give you the outcome of the case as well as more background on the case and ethical implications that this case may have caused, as well as how we have applied this to what we have learned in class. As mentioned in the previous slide, part of the problem with the Reed vs. Town of Gilbert was the rules regarding signs. One of the signs that contains rules are ideological signs. Ideological signs communicate a message or idea to people who are driving by. These signs typically cannot be larger than 20 square feet, and there's no placement restrictions on these signs, so they can be placed wherever you want to put them. There are also no time restrictions on these signs, which we will later realize that is one of the problems within this case. Another type of sign that is discussed in this case is a political sign. Political signs cannot be larger than 32 square feet, and they may only be displayed during election season. Political signs are signs that are designed to influence the outcome of an election. In this case, however, political signs were not the main issue. Rather, it was temporary directional signs that were the issue in this case, which we will get into in the next slide. The main issue that is discussed in this case is the issue of temporary directional signs. Temporary directional signs are signs that are directing public to a church or other qualifying event. The problem within this case is that these signs cannot be larger than 6 square feet. There can be no more than 4 signs within a given area, and all 4 cannot be on a single property. Another issue is that these signs cannot be placed prior to 12 hours before the event, and they cannot be displayed 1 hour after the event. Therefore, this is making it an extremely tight time frame to get rid of all the signs and to make sure that they are disposed of according with the law.
Pastor Clyde Reed and the Good News Community Church rented space at an elementary school in Gilbert, Arizona, and placed signs in the area announcing the time and location of Good News' services. They placed the signs early Saturday mornings and removed them Sunday afternoon, violating the time limit as well as a temporary directional sign restriction that Gilbert places on the town. Good News sued the town of Gilbert, claiming that their free speech rights of the First Amendment had been violated, as well as the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. The district court denied a motion for a preliminary injunction, and the Ninth Circuit affirmed this decision, saying the signs were content neutral.
This case first went to the Court of Appeals, where it was determined that the town's sign code was content neutral and gave justification for temporary regulation of directional signs that were unrelated to the content of the sign. Because the church signs were treated differently from signs with other ideas, there was no need to consider the government's justifications or purposes for enacting the code. Justice Thomas rejected the Circuit Court's conclusion that the ordinance was content neutral because the regulations were not based on disagreement with the message conveyed and the reasons for regulating the signs were unrelated to the content of the signs. Because the ordinance imposed content-based restrictions on free speech, Justice Thomas held that the ordinance would only be constitutional if it survived strict scrutiny. However, the issue with this ruling is that it skipped the first steps of determining whether the law is content neutral on its face. The town of Gilbert argued the ruling from the Court of Appeals, saying that the restrictions did not single out any specific organizations. After some time, the case went to the Supreme Court, and they ruled that the First Amendment prohibits all censorship of speech. Once the Supreme Court issued their ruling, Justice Alito wrote a separate concurring opinion in which he emphasized that the content-based regulations present the same dangers as viewpoints-based regulations, because content-based regulations may interfere with democratic self-government and the search for truth. However, Justice Alito also wrote separately to emphasize that the court's opinions would not prevent cities from regulating signs in a way that would fully protect public safety and serves legitimate aesthetic objectives.
Some of the ethical implications that we saw in the case were the town's sign code, which cannot put restrictions on speech and content of the signs, the limitations on the signs advertising religious services, and could be a violation of freedom of speech. To wrap things up, some topics that related to class discussion, which can be applied to this court case, were the First Amendment, which states Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging free speech. The 14th Amendment, which was also discussed earlier and seen within the case, states no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the U.S. Some other vocab words that we saw were related to the case were preliminary injunction, which is entered by a court prior to a final determination of the merits of a legal case in order to restrain a party from going ahead with a course of conduct or compelling a party to continue with a course of conduct until the case has been decided. Content neutral, on the other hand, refers to laws that apply to all expression without regard to the substance or message of the expression. Such laws generally regulate only the time, place, and manner of speech, in contrast to content-based laws, which usually regulate speech based on content.